Hey everyone, I'm John Lynn, the founder and chief editor at Healthcare IT Today, and we're excited to bring you another in our series of interviews with top leaders in health IT. And today's guest is Patrick Schiess. He's president and CISO at Darena Solutions. Welcome, Patrick.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, so excited to talk about this new solution that you're launching. But before we dive into that, tell us a little bit about yourself and Darena Solutions.
Yeah, so I am Patrick Schiess. I'm a software engineer by trade. My background is in programming. I actually started when I was 11 years old, and
Wow.
my sister, who is a physician, encouraged me to pursue a career in technology, and I did that. So I did the first decade or so of my career in the energy industry. I moved over
Okay.
into high tech and hardware security, and very interestingly enough, my entire family is healthcare. They're doctors and nurses and EMTs, and they've been nagging at me for years that, "Hey, Patrick, you should go take everything you've learned and apply it to healthcare." And so did it. I'm here. I love it. I joined Darena Solutions. And just a little bit about the company. Darena Solutions is a software solutions company. It's been around for about 14 years. And most people know Darena Solutions for regulatory reasons. So we
Okay.
have two very successful products. One is BlueButton Pro, which interestingly enough was the first ONC certified for cures solution by about 2 years, which is kind of crazy to think about.
Yeah.
And we also have a MIPS product, which is wildly successful, and people love it for all the reasons that people love MIPS.
They love that it makes MIPS easier. That's what they love.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's
And
cool. It's great that we have you coming from outside of healthcare. I think we need more of that in healthcare. And you're not the first person to come on the show that said, my family guilted me to come to healthcare.
yeah, that's exactly how it happened. And they planted the seed, and I was actually surprised how similar this industry is to energy. You would have never thought that energy and healthcare would be that similar, but some of the security and the privacy related things are actually quite parallel.
Yeah, it's the high regulation of both environments. That
Oh
that
yeah,
makes some sense.
for sure.
Interesting. Well, you just announced a new solution called MeldRx. Talk to us about the solution, to how it works, what problems does it solve?
Yeah. So first off, MeldRx, I from a practical standpoint, I like to think of MeldRx as our love letter to healthcare IT. So
Oh,
we've been in the
okay.
regulatory space, and it's really interesting because regulatory pushes things to get done, but it's almost like asking a kid to eat their vegetables. It's like
Okay.
they you put it out there and then they do it because they have to, but then it doesn't really always drive the right behavior from people.
Mm,
They don't always want to use it as much. They just want to check the boxes. So what we found is that people have really great ideas. Like they have some very good understanding, both from a clinical and a research standpoint, of what the power of some of these regulations could be if implemented properly. But there's always this thing that gets in the way of them doing it, right? So I forget the quote. It might not even be a quote. It's something like the worst idea is the one that was never shared.
oh,
And
okay.
a lot of people have these great ideas for how to build apps or how to improve clinical efficiency or decision making or those types of things, but they just die. And MeldRx is a platform that really wants to encourage the creativity and the confidence of people to be able to ship and launch these apps. So we take all of the honestly really hard things about building apps, security, standards, etc. And we help people do them at scale. So we've taken all the guesswork out of implementing things like Fire, Smart on Fire, any of these data storage and enterprise security type things, and we've melded it together into one
Mm.
platform, which we're very excited to share with people.
Interesting. So do you see MeldRx as, they should build the entire app on it, or it enables them to get access to the Fire data? Or talk to us about that. What are some of the features available with MeldRx?
Yeah, this is a great question. And I think that where where it becomes challenging for people, like I said, implementing some of these standards, the average person is not going to just like sit there and read a specification from top to bottom.
They're not
They-
going to the FHIR hackathons.
yeah,
They're
yeah, and maybe they should. And honestly, I think the industry would be better for it if more people did. But
Mhm.
the reality is, not everyone has the luxury of that type of time to spend very intricately understanding how to implement some of these things. And this, I think this applies to more than just healthcare too. Like we've seen this with other standards and adoption across the industry, and notably some of the ones around authentication, enterprises moving to modern authentication on protocols like OAuth and OpenID Connect. It's like, why would I do that? I have SAML or I have Kerberos or some of these other ones, and they work really well for people.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true about the identity, but how does that apply to FHIR, and how do you see that playing out for people that, like you said, don't have time or the luxury to go to the FHIR hackathon? What does MeldRx provide them that that they would get if they had done that and done that work?
Yeah, very interestingly, the Smart on Fire standard is actually based on OAuth. So a lot of the same concepts apply. The foundation for OAuth is you have something and I want access to your something. And you give me some level of granular permissions to it. I can register an application, I can be authorized to call or receive the thing that you have for a predetermined period of time. And Smart on Fire implements that, but with extra layers of things that make more sense for healthcare. Like, what is the context in which this particular flow is going to operate? Maybe it's a patient or a provider, et cetera. So those standards, as they are written, are actually quite good. Like I was very surprised the first time I read through some of them. I was like, I don't know about this, but Smart on Fire in particular seems to be a very strong implementation, both from a security standpoint and from an ease of use and efficiency standpoint for people who want to access this type of data.
Interesting. So who is the ideal, customer for this product? Is it the doctor who has an idea at a hospital, or is it the digital health companies? Who do you see as kind of the ideal customer?
Everybody. No, but seriously.
Everybody should be using it. Well, everyone that wants
Yeah.
to use fire.
Yeah, of course. And that would be awesome. I would love to live in a world where everyone wants to use fire. But where we are right now in the progression of adoption, I would say our primary customer or user of this type of product would be app developers. And it's funny to say app developers because in 2023, what does that even mean? Like
Mhm.
my 8-year-old niece is building apps on her iPad, right? So I think as we progress into whatever this stage of this era of technology is, app developers can mean lots of things. It can mean solutions companies who are wanting to cut down on the amount of time it takes for them to build applications and ship them. They don't want to have to worry about constantly rewiring all of the plumbing and those types of things. They need a platform that helps them move faster. It could be an app developer, could be a doctor or a patient or someone, like you said, that has a great idea and they just need a starting point. They don't want to have to worry about some of the technical internal organs of applications and how they work. Not saying that people should not pay attention to things like security. I think it's very important that people understand those things. But if there was a way for people to not have to worry about those things as much, or maybe to the extent of an expert, that would potentially be a very beneficial thing.
It's interesting. It's kind of like the cloud, right? Like, oh, do I want to worry about the data center and doing my own security, or do I want to trust that the cloud's going to do it 10 times better because they have better resources and can afford it? It sounds like it's a similar thing that, you understand the fire security protocols and everything that's done. So, if I build on top of MeldRx, then I get that advantage rather than trying to learn it myself. Is that about what you're saying?
Yeah, I think the advent of cloud was actually a very good parallel there. So the big thing that happened when cloud came about was everybody started just spinning up virtual machines. And the consequence of that is most people aren't experts on internet facing security. So they have a virtual machine. All the ports are open. It's unsecured with like weak credentials. And all of a sudden, you have all of these hackers coming and sitting on the virtual machines and crypto mining and that type of thing, just running up the costs. So there has to be a balance between what is expedient. I think it's the security and productivity trade-off. That's
Mhm.
the old image that people show. It's like a seesaw kind of. You can
Yeah,
usually have one or the other for sure.
interesting. So does this only do Fire, or do you support other standards on MeldRx as well?
Yes. So FHIR is first and foremost. And in 2023, if you're building an app, you should absolutely be using FHIR, is my personal opinion. The reality is not everyone may have that ability today. So just for like word soup purposes, we do support things like CCDA, HL7v2, custom JSON. If you This blew my mind, but apparently in healthcare, PDFs are like king. They're used everywhere. There's just PDFs flying around left and right. We definitely support unstructured data, things that are maybe binary images, etc. So like that, those types of formats are all natively supported with the platform.
Yeah.
And if there's some magical other format, then definitely let us know and we'll look into it.
Well, every 10 years we like to launch a new standard. So
Yeah.
I think all the PDFs are the scanning and faxes. So
Yeah, the
that's where I think
eFax
you're
or
getting them. So why wouldn't a developer just connect to the EHR directly to accomplish this? Why should they use MeldRx instead?
if a developer wants to connect to an EHR directly, I would say go for it. I think that the industry will be better if more people understand the granular level and the complexity of doing integration with EHRs. Now, the reality is a lot of organizations don't have the time to do that kind of thing. And it's interesting that you bring up EHRs in this context because we actually work quite a bit with EHRs, and for the Smart on Fire and the Fire use cases, MeldRx can also be a Smart on Fire or developer portal as a service, which is
Hmm.
a something that is currently a deficiency for a lot of EHRs. So just as to further that example a little bit, we have a couple use cases that I have in mind. One of them is in a clinical trial organization. So this clinical trial organization is pulling EOB data from CMS BlueButton, and with that data, they want to do something with it. They want to understand for their population group what's going on, like how are these things being billed or coded, and how are they being implemented in a clinical setting. And people don't always have that type of insight into the care at scale. And similarly, we're actually working with a very large specialty care registry
Hmm.
to and I didn't really know this about registries. This was kind of a new thing for me when I came into healthcare, but registry and registry data is actually a really good informative source for how much care should cost. So
Hmm.
they can look at large groups of data and people, and for example, if I have surgery on a particular part of my body, maybe it's my arm or something like that, how much does that cost across the industry? And then they can use that to drive recommendations and insights, and it may even in some cases lower the cost that it would be to a patient downstream. So this can be a very positive thing for the lives of people.
I think that use case of the research organizations is really interesting because they just want the data. They don't want to deal with standards at all, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And to be frank, that's kind of the same with EHR vendors. I mean, it's interesting that EHR vendors are customers of Darena as well in the MeldRx solution because and it sounds kind of like e-prescribing. At first, they started building their own, and then they realized, why are we doing this? We can just outsource it. It sounds like Smart on Fire and these Fire connections is a similar kind of use case where they're like, we could do it ourselves, or we could leave it to someone else who specializes in it.
Yeah, and I will say, as a layperson, I didn't understand the extent of how many EHRs there were out there. because my health system uses the same big EHR that most people are familiar with.
Uh-huh.
But the reality is, right now was it like over 380 or so certified EHRs, and then there's a whole large subset of ones that aren't. And if people want to interact with this data, which is awesome, like that's what we want people to want to do. We want people to want to work with the data.
Yeah.
We need to find a way to enable that in a way that is easy and doesn't just slow people down.
Interesting. So, I mean, to that point, how many FHIR data sources can you connect with, and how does that work if you connect multiple data sources? How do you link the data between them? Obviously, you've worked. The MIPS background is interesting. The BlueButton background is interesting since you probably worked with so many EHR. But how many can you connect with? Using the solution.
If it's fire, all of them is
Yeah.
the short answer. The long answer is, interestingly enough, and again, talking about other industries, standards, I think that what will pass a certification on a standard versus the reality of how it's implemented can sometimes have some slight variations.
Yep.
So
The
we have,
flavors of standards is what I
yes,
call
the
it.
flavors of standards. Oh my goodness, I love it. Let's put
Which
the
doesn't make sense, but yeah, it's
Yeah,
a reality.
but that's reality, right? Everyone has their flavor of their standard that they've implemented. And one thing that becomes very challenging if you are connecting to so many different data sources is how do you manage those variations at scale? And
Mhm.
that's one thing that we actually take pride in with MeldRx is we've already accounted for all of those variations, whether it's a special header or if it's an extra call that needs to be made to the system to accomplish. Those are things that while technically a developer or a development team could do themselves, they don't have to. Like we've taken care of that. So you interact with it in a very common way, and all of the rest of it, just don't worry about it. We got it.
Yeah, that's every developer's dream. And how do you handle the patient matching across multiple systems, and linking that data?
Yeah, I had a feeling this question was going to come up. So first and foremost, we aren't doing reconciliation. So
Okay.
I think the reconciliation discussion it's a very good one, but there are other people in the industry that do this exceptionally well,
Yep.
and we leave it to them. They're our partners. We're super excited to let them do that, but we're not in the game of regulation. But what it is that we do when you have multiple data sources, one thing that's pretty common is that most of the EHRs will allow read access from their data. Like everybody's got read. Read is
Yep.
safe. There's not a lot of. I mean, there are some security and
Sure.
control
They
related
need
things, but
permission, but
yeah, you
otherwise
need.
they let you read.
Yeah, I think operating within the normal constraints of how applications should function in the modern era. But where they fall short is being able to write or enrich data in a way that is meaningful and useful. So if someone has a great idea for an app, but all they can do is read data back, you're just going to have a catalog full of data viewers, and maybe you can do some really cool things with reading data, some of the analytics and insights and AI
Yep.
type use cases that I think people are very excited about. But if there was only a way to be able to write and enrich that data, I think we would have a very different discussion about how apps are implemented, and that's something that MeldRx brings to the table with our data vault.
Yeah, so talk to us about that. Yeah, I don't think any of us are waiting for the EHR vendors to let us write back. They're doing it in spits and fits and
Yeah.
starts, and So talk to us about the data vault feature. How does it work? What are the benefits of using it?
Yeah, so I will admit the first time I saw this, someone from our engineering team who is just an absolute genius showed me this in a demo and my jaw hit the ground. I didn't even consider that you could do something like this, but
Mhm.
essentially what happens is let's say that you are interacting with a hospital that's on a large EHR
Mhm.
and you pull the data in, but you have an app that you want to maybe write some social or fitness data or something like that that may or may not fall into the typical normal constraints for for what would come out of a clinical setting. But that data is actually quite useful. So you can write that data to your MeldRx workspace into the data vault, and then it coexists alongside the data that came from the EHR. So when you are querying the data, it automatically knows, okay, this thing that I've written is related to this, and then you can share it, and it's melded into a common context, which I think honestly this could be a very controversial thing. I think this will be very thought provoking for people because this isn't common. Typically, there's a lot of constraints and a lot of intention behind having a singular point of where that data comes from.
Hmm.
But in some ways, that's also very limiting. And I think that's what we're trying to break this ground and help give people the confidence that, hey, maybe there's something else out there that you should be trying, and get those gears turning and see what you come up with.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, the other part of the MeldRx announcement, obviously, is this access to FHIR and these development tools, the data vault. But I also found it interesting that you're launching a community. What's included in the MeldRx community?
It's funny. I feel like a community is only as good as what you put into it. Like I,
Yeah.
I look at the communities that you've built, and they're awesome. But I can also tell that you've spent a lot of time, cultivating that, putting energy, and driving that engagement, and that's why people love it so much.
Yep. It's
But
hard
to
work to build
say,
a community.
oh yeah, oh yeah, I don't think people give it enough credit, honestly. Like even smaller communities of 100 people, that's crazy hard to maintain.
Yep.
So for us to say that we're launching a community, that is a goal for it to eventually be something like that. But what we're launching today is effectively a discussion board of sorts. And what we hope it turns into is something that gives people a venue to start hashing out some of their problems and sharing some of their learnings with others, that people that are using our platforms. And like we still have our support channels. That's I think a good thing for most businesses to have, but
Yeah.
we do want to start pushing people to start asking the larger community for their advice on things. And one really interesting thing about communities is those connections and like networking that happens in those cases can actually lead to even cooler things. Like some of the even me joining this company happened through me getting involved with a group of people that eventually led to me joining the company as the chief technology officer and now as the president and CISO. So I think communities can be very powerful things, but it's not just going to happen. Like you got to put in the work, and that is something that we are very actively thinking about and hoping that we can push to fruition.
Yeah. No, obviously I'm a big community builder, and I think people misunderstand how much work it takes to build the culture of a community. Once you do, you're right. The community kind of takes a form of its own and can and provides surprising results, right?
Right.
But to get to that point, you have to invest a lot of time building the culture and driving the behaviors that you want. So I think it's exciting though, because it makes sense for a community to come together around these FHIR resources and around the data that's available or how they're using the data. So in that sense, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I'll also say that we do have a lot of quick start and tutorials and sample applications and things like that, and other open source tools that even if you never use MeldRx ever, those are still available to you. And we're hoping that by putting these tools out there to make things easier for people, that will start to build and drive the excitement and the community. Uh, like fire integration is hard. It's new for a lot of people. It's new for the industry for sure. Most organizations, maybe if they've implemented it, it could be just because they have to. Like we really want people to understand, and if we can make it as digestible as possible for them, and they can see and envision and understand the power of it, I think we can do some really cool things. And that's really what we want.
I love that vision. So where can people go to learn more about MeldRx?
Well, we have our website, which is meldrx.com. which just launched a brand new one. If you're interested, definitely go check it out. You can also hit us up on LinkedIn and Twitter, or X, whatever we're calling it these days. Also, keep an eye out on our YouTube channel. We've got some content that we have planned there, including some live streams, some videos, and maybe a few other things. So
Awesome. Well, Patrick, this has been really interesting to hear about this new product and the way you're enabling application developers. So appreciate you for taking time to share this. And thanks everyone for watching and listening. If you want to find more great healthcare IT content like this, be sure to check it out at healthcareittoday.com or search for Healthcare IT Today on your favorite podcasting applications. Thanks, Patrick.
appreciate it, John. Thank you so much.